Gardening takes us outdoors to revel in the beauty of our nurtured plants and blooms, but you can easily enjoy the garden indoors as well with beautiful bouquets created out of what you cultivate. We'll talk about growing flowers for cutting and how to arrange them straight ahead on Great Gardening.
If you look, you actually see the growth for next year.
This is a plant that's been infected with early blight.
I can feed a lot of people.
I always want to use a garden fork.
You just wrap it.
Take a look at the environment, try to work with your environment.
Hello and welcome to Great Gardening. I'm Pamela Fish, and joining me are two of the most judicious growers in these parts, Tom Casper, who is Supervisor of Park Maintenance for the City of Duluth, and Bob Olin, an area educator and horticulturist. And welcome back to you. Well, if you had brought your flowers indoors and cut them and put them in pots, you would have been able to enjoy them. But otherwise, boy, getting out in the gardens was tough the last few days, the last several days.
Well, I was hoping you were going to say what's new in the garden. I was going to say sunshine.
There's the old adage, be careful what you wish for. We went from 2 weeks of drought to a week and a half here of real wet, soggy weather, but it hasn't been all bad. We're off to a pretty good start, and a lot of the perennials are doing very, very well with this moist conditions.
We'll take a look at some of them in just a moment, but we also want to welcome our phone volunteers who are here to answer your called-in questions. They're from the Duluth Garden Flower Society Mount Royal Club tonight, so please call them at 218-788-2844, or you can call toll-free 877-307-8762, and when you call, you'll find out what our experts have to say about what might be perplexing you in the garden. Well, the recent heavy rains and high moisture content in the soil have made for some really soggy beds, but they've also promoted some great growth, as you pointed out earlier, Bob.
Absolutely. Transplants are doing well. Some of the direct seeded maybe people had a little trouble with, and you always got to be a little patient because we had cool, wet soils, and we're still going to have just a great season ahead.
And you brought us some examples of things that are doing well with all the rain and moisture that we've been getting. I think we saw some of your spinach.
Yeah.
And
spinach that was planted early, here we go, has just been exceptional with all that rain and moisture. And then there's garlic that went in, and I have to share this with people. A rule of thumb is you plant mid-October, but you can extend that. That went in November 15th with a little bit of straw covering.
Is it usually that tall?
No, I think it's really done better this year. That moisture has been really very stimulative. In fact, our Northern Lights azaleas, which are just in perfect bloom right now, and this wonderful contrast of real gray days with bright colors is fun. And of course, rhubarb, a stalwart for this area, and it's just loving all this moisture in this weather.
It is. Okay. Well, the delights of growing flowers are well known to gardeners, but growing them to cut takes just a bit more know-how. We take you to a field of flowers for this week's tip.
I'm in my snapdragon garden, and alongside of my snapdragons are my gladiolas that are spiking, so within a week we will have the gladiolas. In the background we have our sunflowers, and on the other side I have a variety of other plants and flowers too. For one thing, we start early. We have a greenhouse. Actually, we have our basement with grow lights, so we start in our basement with the grow lights. Then about April 1st we move out to our greenhouse. The gladiolas, we plant early. We plant in April. We don't care what the weather is, we still plant. And now we've got glads coming. We have 2 plantings of gladiolas, so we'll get 3 rows done, and then 3 more rows will start. The sunflowers, the same thing. We start the seeds in the greenhouse, but then we plant them in succession, so that every 2 weeks we'll plant another batch of seeds so that they keep coming all throughout the year. We don't want all the sunflowers to come ripe on the same day. We will go with sunflowers now. We have some that are just only about this far off the ground, so they'll still keep coming into September. And I'm thinking if I keep my zinnias cut, they will keep coming until we get a frost. Keeping the flowers cut. That's the main thing. If you keep deadheading the flowers, the plants will keep producing, and then they'll keep coming back. I read a lot of books, and I kind of get ideas mostly from the books that I read on how to put plants together, what colors. I started out with my sweet peas, and I kind of went from sweet peas to my snapdragons because they have complementary colors. And then I can add in some dahlia or some zinnias or some of my other flowers just to kind of give it a little bit different look to it. No secrets, it's just a lot of hard work.
Hard work, but what a beautiful result she had there.
Yeah, well, and of course we had her husband Doug on a couple weeks ago talking about great raspberry tips, but wonderful flower growers as well. And I really take that philosophy as well in my flower gardens. I really look for plants that are great for cut flowers, so you can go out on any given day, cut a bouquet of flowers, bring them in, enjoy them in the house, as well as being able to enjoy them outdoors. So
absolutely,
wonderful way to extend that enjoyment of the garden. So.
And, you know, the other thing we have to continually remind people, this far north, we get these very intense bright days, cooler nights, and that combination brings out extremely vivid color. So we really have an advantage over certain locations farther south. So don't miss those beautiful flowering plants.
Was that just your nice way of saying take that, Minneapolis?
Yeah, I was going to say, even though it was 50 degrees a couple days ago, well, with that,
there is a positive side to all of that. Well, growing in your own backyard are numerous plants and flowers that could be the makings for lovely arrangements. And now here's a local designer to show us how that's done.
One of the styles that we use here quite a bit is called hanukubari, and hanukubari means natural support system. I'm going to create a natural support system underneath the water line. I used Weeping Louisa crab, and I just cut it this morning so it's movable. I'm going to tie a knot in it, and then I'm just going to pop it in here. And I am going to now thread some greenery into this natural support system. The first greenery I'm going to use is from my garden. It's called May apple, and some of you guys might have a May apple at home. It looks kind of like that. The blossom looks just like that. Pretty cute. Grows in the sun. So I give it a fresh cut, and I'm going to slide some here. A lot of people have this at home. Lady's mantle. Lady's mantle is great for greenery. And I'm doing 180 degrees. If I do it on this side, I'm going to do it on the other side. Another greenery that works really, really well, that lasts a long time, that you have probably a lot of, is from a lilac tree. This is a shrub from my yard. It is 9-bark, maybe Diablo 9-bark. I'll get in trouble with Tom Casper if I give it the wrong name. I don't know, Tom. It is one version of 9-bark. There are several. I have 2 different kinds in my yard. I like to add a couple different kinds of greenery to just the base of this, so there's variation before you even put your flowers in. One rule that really you should follow if you want your flowers to last is no greenery under the water line. You want fresh, clean water and fresh, clean, naked stems. I'm going to start with some hanging lilacs. I'm going to try and make this arrangement kind of lavender and pink and possibly a little bit of blue, lime green, some orange. Right now in my yard we've got irises, and so I grabbed a couple. They're not blooming yet, but I think these will just open right up as they sit and kind of get warm. When I start putting flowers in, I'm usually going to group 3 together and maybe put 1 on the other side. I like Bleeding Heart because it really does all the work for you. There's greenery on there, there's a line, there's a shape, there's color, and there's interest. We also have cushion spurge, I think that's what this is called, in our yard, and it really grows quite a bit, so you should use it in a lot of your arrangements. It really adds some fresh, kind of this limey chartreuse green. Clematis is probably on occasion difficult to extract from your garden because it's usually wrapped around something, but if you can get a couple pieces, wow, it's just beautiful. Purple and orange or blue and orange look great together. My next job is to kind of figure out, do I need more of a focal point? Do I need to add ribbon to this? One thing I think is really important is just that you get out there and cut some things out of your garden. So we want to teach people the best way to use flowers, so everybody has flowers in their lives.
What a gorgeous arrangement, and all from things that are growing out there right now.
Yeah, what a great example of just going out and cutting stuff, picking stuff from your garden or your neighbors, if they're okay with that, and creating a wonderful bouquet that you can really enjoy for weeks, and then really continue to do that throughout the season as those spring flowers finish blooming and the summer flowers come in and then the fall flowers. So great tip by Angela. And of course we have lots of other wonderfully qualified designers in our area, so there's lots of other choices for that as well. So.
All right, well, let's get to the questions. We have a
Okay.
lot of them coming in. Let's start with this one. How many times can you harvest your asparagus in one season? That's from Therese in Duluth.
I think the most critical thing is just to let it get established. So in the first 2-3 years, you're not going to do much harvesting at all, and then after that, you can harvest it pretty aggressively and take it down as long as there's still some green material left. So getting it established the first 2-3 years is the important thing.
And how many times a season? I think she was.
Well,
wondering, too.
as it grows, you're going to get the opportunity maybe 2-3 times a season.
Okay.
Therese sounds like quite the gardener.
Yeah. Is it a good idea to prune a tomato plant when it gets bigger? That's from Jerry in the North Shore.
Well, the thing on a tomato is that you want to ask why you're pruning it. If you're going to prune maybe to 2 leaders, you're taking off smaller suckers. That's one thing. Anytime you're pruning, you're taking off fruiting potential. So if you can stake it up and keep it growing, at least until we get into about August 15th, then above the fruit line we want to prune it back. But before that time, just let it grow, because that's the fruiting potential of the plant.
And of course, we've seen some of our gardens we've toured with tomato plants that are 6 and 7 feet tall and elaborate staking systems. So.
From Kathy in Duluth, my red-purple smoke bush is not as pretty and big as it was last year. What can I do to change that?
Well, that's one, it's one of those that are borderline for our climate, and we really don't know the long-term effect of what we're going to see from our snowless winter. We really didn't have a lot of cold temps, but maybe enough to really influence some of those more tender perennials or tender shrubs in this case that we're growing. So she can be patient. It will probably recover, but it might take a year or two for that to happen. So.
You know, Tom, it's interesting. People talked about the mild winter, but we had this very, very warm October. We really didn't have a good opportunity for a good, very gradual cool down. So we're seeing on certain plants a significant winter kill that you wouldn't expect from a mild winter like that. But oftentimes a mild winter can be more damaging than a real severe cold winter.
Well, speaking of damaging, Carol in Blackberry saw her hostas get hit pretty hard by the hailstorm, and the leaves are falling off. She's wondering, can she cut those leaves off?
Yeah, just cut them right down to the ground. Unfortunately, they're just going to continue to die back. So she'll want to cut it back. Hopefully it will resprout. It probably won't kill the plants, but it's certainly going to set her garden back for the year. So.
And, you know, Tom, that's a good point. We might want to encourage with a little bit of fertilizer, either organic or synthetic, particularly this time of year to get that regrowth really started. With all the rain, too, that's maybe a tip for many of our gardeners. We may have washed out some of the available nutrient and nitrogen, so a little bit more fertility from some source in this kind of a year is a good idea.
And Frank from Chisholm wants to know, how do you know what to add to the soil when you start your garden?
There's a good question. We really do suggest that people consider getting a soil test. Then that kind of removes all doubt. You'll know nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, organic. It gives you some good basic information. And then other than that, it's a little difficult to just look at a soil and determine where the deficiencies might be.
And certainly an inexpensive way to find that out. It's about $10. You ship it down to the U of M. They process it. They evaluate it, send you back some recommendations, which can save you lots of money, lots of heartache, and lots of lost plant material in your garden. So.
John from Duluth wants to know what to use to fertilize 3 paper birch trees. They're 50 years old, but let's see, they haven't done anything in 5 years.
Done anything, meaning they're not alive?
Yeah, I'm not sure now. What type of fertilizer? If so, how often should I fertilize?
Well, really, deciduous trees want to be fertilized in the fall, so he would want to do that, and some kind of, preferably if he's going to, some kind of soil injection around the drip line of the birch, but more than likely at 50 years old, they're probably fine without any fertilizer and should be okay.
All right. And another tree question. Linda from Two Harbors has 2 birch trees, 1 maple, with growth on the lower branches, but the tops are dead. Can anything be done about that?
That's kind of tough. We see a lot of dieback, and if they're younger trees, we're even more concerned. We are seeing a certain amount of that. It may be related to the warming trend that we're beginning to see, but oftentimes they will actually recover from that depending on the season too. So, but there is some natural dieback, particularly on older, both of those species, older specimens, we're beginning to see that.
And if they haven't leafed out, she probably, if she's going to want to save the tree, go in and clean that stuff up, cut it out, and remove it.
All right, only a minute left for this round of questions. So I loosened the soil around my perennials, finding grayish-white circular worms. That's from Carol in Duluth. What are they? What can I do?
Well, grayish-white is probably the June beetle larvae, and they will spend at least 2 seasons in the soil, so they're probably not going to be damaging there, and they shouldn't be confused with the cutworms that everybody's talking about. Totally different species. That's going to give her probably the June bug, and other than potatoes and other crops, they're not going to be overly damaging.
And she should learn to fish. They're great for fish bait, so dig them up.
Are they really?
Oh, yeah.
Seriously?
Absolutely.
Okay, all right, I might try that. Dennis in Duluth wants to know what to do to get rid of cutworm eggs, and we talked about that.
Well, the egg is a good idea.
Just wipe them off.
Wipe them off and dispose of them, and then, as we've mentioned, we're probably going to see a significant infestation. Tomatoes in particular should all be protected. You need some kind of a paper collar. Simple to do, but worth taking the time. Tom?
Yep.
All right. Okay, back to more questions later on, but for now, we want to talk about how for many, gardening is a form of art, and for this couple, their artwork is just part of the larger palette.
Hi, my name is Sharon. We're in Proctor. This is a peony garden. There's about 11 here. There are some that are the same, but some are singles. The one up there, there's a single here, pink, and then the rest are all doubles. Although I have quite a few lilies, and we have a clematis and some morning glories growing here, and there are some daylilies and dahlias. This has probably been here for at least 25 years. We've been here for approximately 35 years. And this particular arrangement of this garden has probably been here for 25 years. This is Campanula lactifolia. It has a real light, sweet smell to it.
It is. It's nice and sweet.
And it's kind of a rough-looking plant, but I like it because it's so tall and it just smells wonderful. This side of the garden are shrub roses, and I have it outlined with catmint, and then I'm just starting some lavender outline for it. I have some white roses here that are really old. David's mother, her neighbor gave them to her, and they're originally from Norway. And they brought them here, I think, in the 1800s. And they're very sweet smelling, too. I don't do any hybrid teas. If I want to see them, I'll go down to the rose garden. But the roses this summer are just, they're just outstanding. They're just so brilliant and so many. This William Baffin rose this year is just so pretty and so loaded with flowers. And the salvias are just coming into bloom. I have some sweet peas mixed in with the roses, the white and lavender sweet peas. The yellow foxgloves are just starting to bloom. My husband David likes to do woodworking, and in the wintertime we do crafts and make stuff for the gardens. And he's been making these carvings of animals and, fantasy animals. David made this gate and weather vane and the obelisk. And all these old-fashioned daylilies are just about, well, they're all coming into bloom, and when they're all in bloom, it looks like torches out here, you know, lining our pathways. This is, this is just all woods garden. And this is mainly shade plants. There's a stilbe, lots of hostas, hucheras. There's a bishop's hat, there's columbine. And I don't know how many different hostas varieties we have here. I used to keep track, but I just, I don't keep track anymore. There's too many. If we're working out here, we'll, you know, sit here to rest and maybe have some iced tea or something, but even then I'll see a weed or something over there and have to jump up and pick it. One winter, David made some little forms, and I poured concrete in them and made these stepping stones, and then, well, in the fall I did it, and then in the winter, that was my craft job. So every one has a different design of Irish, Celtic lore. And then these little rock houses I made one winter. Here's another one of David's carvings, a carousel horse with, well, this is dianthus underneath here, the pink. Well, the Stella d'Oro daylilies are just all about to bloom, and they'll be quite a show alongside the fence. And now I have a lot of herbs in this area. And we have vegetables in here. There's grapes, 3 different kinds of grapes. These California poppies, I had them years ago, and they just keep coming back from seed every year. They're very silky and nice to feel. It's like this whole yard is one big canvas, and you're painting this picture with flowers and trees and shrubs.
Wow. And the Stotties are such great gardeners,
Yeah,
and so
they are.
gracious with, of course, our tour that was there last year as part of the PBS tour, and what
And
a
incredibly
wonderful-
talented.
Yeah, they are just wonderful people, and the wood carvings and the stepping stones and the flowers. What a delight to have been there.
It was. It really was. Well, let's get to some more questions because we do have quite a few that have come in. John from Duluth has an azalea growing on one side. When is it time to trim it and shape it?
Oh, azaleas are tough to prune
Yeah,
up, aren't they?
yeah. Really, the only time you can do that is when the new growth is growing, if you want to do some shaping. So now that the flowers are starting to wrap up, and now we'll see the new growth coming out, that's really the only time you can do that.
And
so.
you really can't do it too aggressively. It's not really a cutback shrub, so you have to do a small amount
Right.
each year, annually.
Okay. Bruce from north of Duluth says the blossoms on my blueberry plants are falling to the ground. They did that last year also, and I had fewer berries. Any advice on that?
That's a good question.
We didn't stop Bob, did we?
We'll get back to you, Bruce.
There can be reasons why we lose the flower buds. Believe it or not, they can be vulnerable to colder conditions. We'd like to know where he is. We had frost the last couple of nights. That can be a possibility if there's certain times. But I'm just wondering if he wants to again encourage good growth, lower acidic conditions, and so forth. And it's environmental one way or another.
Okay. The leaves on the lilac trees in Hill City on Helen's property are turning brown. What can be done about that?
One of the things I would think is botrytis, which we've talked about a couple of times. With the amount of moisture that we've had now the last couple of weeks, we're going to start seeing that. Peonies are also very susceptible to it. The best thing that she can do, if in fact it is botrytis, is to remove those leaves and to dispose of them, not allow them to fall on the ground or be in the area. So remove them, put them in a plastic bag, put them in the garbage and get rid of them, and that generally will help slow down the problem. So.
Okay. My roses are shriveling, says Susan from Lakewood, especially at the top. And she's wondering if this is thrips. I'm not familiar with that. Or what can I do to prevent this?
Yeah, thrips are a microscopic insect that their mouth is a piercing and sucking apparatus, basically. So they inject into the tissue of the rose bud or the leaves, and very difficult to see. If she thinks it's thrips, the easiest way to diagnose it is with a piece of paper.
Oh.
Take the bud, and you can hold a piece of paper underneath it and tap it on the piece of paper. If she sees tiny little, almost like just a little narrow, almost the size of a pencil lead, and they start to move, those are thrips. And then there are things she can do to control it. The other thing she might want to look for is aphids as well. They're already up and in the area.
Yeah,
So
we are seeing a lot of aphids, and thrips. You also see this area where they've kind of scratched the surface. So they have a very distinctive markings that come from thrips. So aphids might, as you say, we're seeing a lot of heavy aphid infestations right now.
generally, thrips are later in the season, so I would be surprised if it was that.
Okay. Jack in Duluth, about raspberries, he says they've grown 2 feet, the tops 4 to 5 inches, are wilted, and then there's some damage within the stem. Maybe something's eating them. Any advice on that? Any thoughts?
Yeah, I think we're going to begin to see some leaf miners. We're seeing an explosion of certain types of insect populations that are causing this kind of damage. He might want to actually take a little look if the stems are clean. We have a lot of fungal diseases that can cause this kind of these kind of symptoms, but you'll see that on the outers of the stem, discoloration, areas that are pockmarked. And once again, if you're going to take those out, you've got to be careful about disposal. So we'd have to take a little closer look. Pocket knife, cut into that surface and see if it actually is either insect or disease that's causing the problem.
Well, we're running out of time, but a couple quick rhubarb questions. Certain parts of the row aren't coming up and it's thin. That's in Duluth. And then Joe in Cloquet says his rhubarb looks like it exploded. The stalks are curly. Wondering what that might be from.
Without a doubt, rhubarb is really responding one way or another to these wet conditions. Rhubarb likes fairly good drainage.
Okay.
So if we've got a thin area, we've got heavy soils, in this kind of moisture, I would suspect that. The thin growth, it also does like a nitrogen source. So if you've got a real weak soil, maybe a sandy or gravelly soil, you want to get an organic source of nitrogen in there for the plant. Or it could be the seed stalks. They came out very early. You want to get those cut and out of there as well. But
all right.
A couple different problems probably associated with these kinds of symptoms.
Okay. Well, that's all the time we have for questions this week. But we do want to let people know that next week on Great Gardening, we are expanding to a 1-hour program. So plan ahead and watch June 7th for even more expert advice from our resident great gardeners during that 1-hour special edition. And then we do have one item from our calendar this week. It's from the UW Extension Service, and it's a Healthy Food for All series that is called How Does the Garden Grow? Some basics and advanced gardening tips. They're going to have it every other Friday this summer, featuring fresh food, nutrition, and classes are free and open to the public. And there's the information. You can go to our website as well to find more information about that. But looks like we're out of time. We want to thank again Tom Casper and Bob Olin. Also thank our phone volunteers. And of course, all of you who tuned in and called in your questions. From all of us here, enjoy the garden.